last week I was in the gym working out, and a friend of mine came in and joined me, and he slammed a 60-pound dumbbell on my phone. And
It's-
it actually
Did he
surprisingly,
kick in for it?
oh no, 100%. You got to have insurance for these things, and of course he
Oh, come
yeah,
on, though.
it was
You're
on.
way too nice.
Ah, yeah, just hey man, you owe me $1,400. He would have
Bro, at least kick in for half.
is
You just broke my
he
phone.
would have had a heart attack. Well, I was gonna say, funny thing. Well, this is the new phone now, but this thing was warped. Like I can't
Oh, I'm
even explain it. It
sure.
was like folded, and somehow, some way, it still worked. I
Oh, you got a curve screen
was
on your
still able
phone,
to take
huh?
calls with it. I had it for a full day before I got the uh the new phone, but it took calls and I was able to text and everything. It was pretty funny. But
Jesus.
yeah, no, he chipped in. He's a good friend. I mean,
Oh, he did chip in? I was
it
wondering if he
was
chipped in. How much did he give you?
well, I use AT&T and their insurance policy, 150 deductible, so he paid it in full. He bought me a new case because the case that I had on it was also warped.
Well,
And
of course.
I had a
Um,
one of those tempered glass screen protectors, so he paid for one of those
they
too.
don't
So
shatter.
it worked out. It worked out.
They
But
don't shatter.
hopefully we don't have a repeat. I'm gonna have to just keep it in my pocket next time, I guess. I mean,
Man, I
it
would
wasn't really in an area where, it wasn't like, I don't know, he just dropped the weights and it just took an awkward bounce and just landed on my phone. But
I just wouldn't even mention that. Like, I wouldn't even say that out loud.
I
Don't
know
wish that juju on yourself.
that's what I'm saying. Hey, it's more him than me.
I guess.
But
I guess.
well, hey, it's 1:35, and we'll go ahead and just we got a looks like we got a lot of newcomers today. Everyone, appreciate you
Nice.
joining in today. We got Carol back. Carol, welcome back. Thought Susan was going to be joining us. She had registered, but maybe she'll be joining in with us here shortly. But for those of you that are new in here, appreciate you guys joining in. If this is your first time, welcome. And just for you guys' information, we do these webinars weekly every Tuesday, 1:35 p.m. to 1:55 p.m. Eastern Standard. We do sometimes go a little over, so we completely understand your time. If you got to hop off, no worries. Appreciate you being here, and hopefully you guys will find some value in today's presentation. We're going to be talking about compliance and telehealth, and this will be interesting as well because for those of you that are new, we do a weekly trivia based off last week's presentation, and today I'm sorry, last week's presentation was on contingency planning. So that's what today's trivia question is going to be referring to. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share screen. Jose, let me know once you guys can see. And for those of you as well, I hope you guys can hear us okay. Leave us a comment or emoji if you could, just to make sure everything's all good on that end. And also, we will be at the end of the presentation. We'll host a Q&A. So if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. But we certainly will get to them towards the end of the today's presentation. So I'm gonna go ahead and share screen. Jose, let me know if you can see.
Yep.
Give me just a second. All righty. So today's trivia question, again, based off last week's discussion on contingency planning, the question is, what is the primary objective of a contingency plan in the context of healthcare organizations as highlighted in last week's presentation? And the answers we got today is it A, ensuring compliance with OSHA regulations, B, minimizing damage, injury, or loss of property, personnel, and data. C, enhancing employee training and education, or D, improving communication between healthcare providers. So you guys go ahead and drop your answers in the chat. Again, for those of you that are joining us for the first time, hey, go ahead and take a guess, and we'll give it about a minute. Looks like we got one answer so far. Welcome, Debbie. Linda submitted her answer. Who else we got? I know we got a lot more on this call. Come on. Don't be shy. Give it another 15 seconds. Oh, they're flowing in now.
Yeah, they were just nervous before. You had them all skittish
Guys,
and
don't be
stuff, right?
nervous. Don't be nervous. It's just a trivia question. It's just for $1 million.
It's just.
It's just for $1 million.
Don't start saying that now. Now they're gonna start saying, "All right, where's my money?"
All right. So the answer is, in fact, B, minimalizing damage, injury, or loss of property, personnel, and data. I did see a D. I tried to make this sort of a trick question, you could say. Simone had answered D, improving communication between healthcare providers. I try to outline primary. I mean, these other answers are pretty solid,
Acceptable.
but the acceptable, but the primary objective of a contingency plan is minimizing damage, injury, loss of property, personnel, and data. So
Man, you threw one of those most correct answer, not not correct answer.
no,
Gosh, you're mean
I,
to people.
I am. So no, hey, for the most part, everybody got it. Simone, you had a
Yep,
good answer to well, it's not a wrong answer, okay, to say the
it's just
least.
not the most correct.
Yes. So again, appreciate you guys participating, and we'll go ahead and dive into today's presentation. Give me a second and let me pull it up, and we'll go ahead and get started. And Jose, you can still see screen, correct? Just want to
Yep,
make sure.
yep.
Awesome.
Still seeing everything.
Perfect. Let's get it going. So again, everyone, thank you for joining us for another edition of our compliance by step-by-step webinars. My name is Ray Walters, and I'll be your host for today's session. Um, Absolutely thrilled once again to have my co-host and distinguished guest, Mr. Jose Delgado, on this webinar. For those of you that are joining us new today, Jose has over 17 years of experience in business development, healthcare management, and consulting. His latest venture is actually owning a mental health telehealth clinic. So this is totally in Jose's realm today.
Yeah.
And Jose, did I miss anything? Anything you want to add for the audience?
I mean the consulting firm that we my family runs, we've done everything from cradle to grave, establishing different lines of business, establishing new businesses, expanding, contracting, selling, transition of providers and ownership, you name it, we've done it. The only thing I pretty much won't do again is hardwire IT and cables through a unit. That I did that once because I was dumb enough, and I won't do it again. They can't pay me enough. Oh
IT stuff is a lot of work.
yeah, oh yeah. No, no, that
Make
that
sure
was
you,
that was for the birds.
for those of you that are doing your IT on yourself, save yourself the trouble and get a get an
Yeah,
MSP.
definitely don't wire it yourself. Definitely don't do that.
Right.
So, but yeah, we've done everything from cradle to grave, and really one of the main reasons why we got into the mental health field was because we saw one that there was a major need, and then two that every decade or so we go and invest in a clinic, and we actually show our clients, prospective and old and current clients, that we're doing the things that we recommend offices do, so that way they can succeed and grow. And it's really one of those like, hey, look, this is proof of concept. And one of the major ones for us was telemedicine
Mm,
in most specialties, because there's always something that can be maximized and optimized. And how do we do that with the resources that we have and not spending much more on resources, right? So that's really where I put the presentation together with Ray here. Ray made it pretty. I put the nuts and bolts in. So basically, if you get the slides, you're not going to get much, because death by PowerPoint is a real thing to me. So it's the PowerPoint itself is short, so we can jump right into it, Ray.
Yeah, no worries. And again, for those of you that are joining us for the first time, just want to give you guys a brief background what we do here at EPICompliance. EPICompliance was established in 2013 by leading healthcare professionals with, I would say, a combined knowledge of over 40 years of experience in healthcare compliance. We specialize in one thing, developing compliance training for healthcare organizations, healthcare students, and business associates alike. We've also started well, I want to say we just started. We've had some in-person events that we've hosted. We call it Epi conferences. Shoot, Jose, how long have we been doing those conferences for? Since
Um, we're skipping
2015?
24, but we've been doing them since the era that is known as pre-COVID.
Yeah, exactly. I want to say 2015 might have been the first. 2014 or 2015 is when we started hosting those in-person events, and really what I'm getting
Well,
at is, well,
my son's 6. Yeah, about 7 years. So
yeah.
yeah, like 2016 era.
And long story short, it's a healthcare conference based on innovation and essentially what's going on in today's world in healthcare. And another offering at that event as well is we host a HIPAA security officer training program, where again, if you're a compliance officer, an admin, a physician, a business owner, highly recommend taking this course. It really gives you a deep dive and gives you a perspective on HIPAA privacy, HIPAA security, and all the fun stuff that entails. And Jose actually is one of the instructors of that course. And this is also a course that we will be offering online. Again, currently it's only at our in-person events, but it is something that we're working to releasing online here soon. And like I said, any administrators, healthcare professionals, business owners, physicians that are interested in more of a deeper dive into HIPAA, highly recommend this course. We're aiming to have it live here by the end of first quarter, maybe even sooner. Jose, did you want to add on to that CHSO program?
That's not the only certification course. We usually have one or two more
Yep.
certification courses as we go. So it also lends itself to providers or provider owners
Hmm.
or office managers that multi role. So every year it kind of changes. Last year we had wound care, we
Yes.
had the CHSO, and we had one other one. Why am I
We had
blanking on it?
did we do the administrator?
No, we didn't do the administrator. Hey, we had one more. I'll probably remember it halfway through the presentation. I'll just blurt it out. But
All good.
but yeah, so
But that's a little bit about us. And let's go ahead and get into it. So today's objectives, again, we're going to be talking about compliance and telehealth and some of the objectives that we're going to be going over today. Obviously, want to understand the nuances of telemedicine. We want to explore the organization shaping the compliance in this industry, identify common risk factors, and we want to take a look at Jose's got a real world example, which being his practice that he currently owns,
yeah.
and discussing obviously potential solutions and those compliance challenges.
Yeah, I
So
believe in a blue ocean strategy. We're not doing anything crazy.
yeah,
We're so I'm more than happy to share because I mean sometimes I can learn from other people and it helps me optimize what we're doing. So I'm always looking for optimization on my team. So I definitely incentivize cleverness and independence, which has bitten me in the butt, but more often than not, it just helped me optimize the team that we've got going there.
and
So when
Jose,
it comes to
real
telemedicine,
Jose,
this
real
actually dates back to uh 50s and 60s because we didn't have major medical insurance. So everything was cash based. But if a provider needed to contact someone, maybe it was after hours, maybe they were at the office and somebody at the hospital or a nursing home needed some information, they could call the doctor and the doctor would actually go and conduct the visit through the phone. And there have been codes for billing all the way back to then. Now, if we fast forward to the early 2000s, the reality of the matter is that the telemedicine rules didn't really change that much, even though technology went through leaps and bounds. Like, who has a house phone? I think my parents still have a house phone,
I was gonna
but
say
it's mostly for my grandparents.
my parents still have a house phone as well, but it's like it's
I
just there.
mean, the amount of calls that they get now is like it's only like
It-
5 people. It's almost like the bat phone, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah.
uh so it's kind of funny how that works out. Everybody's got their cell phone, everybody's got internet, everybody's got devices that fit in their palm of their hand that have both audio and video capabilities. And one of the main reasons why CMS and HHS and the insurances even started allowing telemedicine and started putting ideas and rules together was because they wanted to get care to those that were in rural areas that could not easily reach a hospital, could not easily reach their provider. So if something happened, they had to be able to use those. So a lot of the rules that are currently in place and have been in place for the last 15 years have been put there based on technology that was 15 years old that they didn't think we would ever get to the point that internet is as fast as it is now.
Mm,
If anybody still remembers in '07, you're still talking about DSL. Some people in 2007 still had dial up in the United States and they weren't in rural areas. So you really want to take a look at the fact that sadly healthcare, the regulations behind healthcare are years behind the business. So we have to future proof
mm,
when we're looking to be ahead of the game. But realistically now since 2015 there are some new specialties and there are new guidelines. So the basic guidelines you're going to have to take a look at your state specific, but here in Florida and based on HHS, when you're looking at telemedicine, the jurisdiction for which the patient lives and is currently residing is the jurisdiction that governs the rules for telemedicine. It's a lot of words to say this. If my patient is in Florida
mm.
and I'm in Florida and I have a Florida license, we're good to go. I can see the patient. Even if my patient is a Florida patient, but that patient is in Georgia and I don't have a Georgia license, I cannot see that patient because now I'm practicing without a license. So it's based on where the patient is. Now,
Sure.
here's the funny part. I can be in Taiwan. I can be in Thailand. I can be in Africa. I can be in Germany. As long as I have the same a license that corresponds with where the patient is, we're good to go. So I can have a Florida license. My patient is in Florida and I can see them in Thailand. It's inconvenient because Thailand is what, 13-hour time change? But hey, I can do that. You know what I mean? So it's something to where
Interesting.
when we know what the rules are, we can set up a plan to win. You know, I like to use the Monopoly rule. If I'm going to go play Monopoly at a friend's house and potentially lose a friend, right? We got to know what the house rules are or we're all going to get mad. No one's going to win if you don't know the house rules. So we've got to know what those rules are. Realistically, what you want to take a look at is what are the different ways I get paid? Do they allow telemedicine? What do they allow? And what do I want to do in my business? Right? Because the whole reason why you want to do telemedicine is one of three reasons. Either I want to be mobile as a provider, I want to streamline the business, or there are new services that we can provide that don't increase our cost that much, but we can increase our revenue by quite a bit. Does this make sense? So this is a
Yeah.
situation where we can have quite a few quite a few different specialties moving into my primary care clinic, but the provider is never there. So they can do these virtually. The patient isn't there. This can be done completely virtually. And since most offices are on electronic health records and most offices have devices in every room, this isn't really a complex situation. Here, hold on one second. Let me get him a bottle.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, I wanted to ask this prior to the presentation, so forgive me. But for those of you that currently either interested in telehealth or possibly implementing telehealth in your practice or currently do telehealth, just throw a one in the chat. I'm just curious how many individuals in here are currently implementing telehealth at their practice. Awesome. Susan, I didn't see you earlier. You must have joined in late. Good to see you. So we got a few in here. Wonderful.
Have a follow. Finish roll. Shh. Come here. If you're gonna do this, yeah. All right. So you got my assistant here.
All
Okay, cool.
right.
So,
Got our
great. We
co-host
can.
co-host. Hey,
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys.
hey, real quick,
So, all
I
right.
just chimed in on the chat. There's a couple individuals in here, including Susan Romanelli, that implement telehealth currently. So we do have a couple individuals in here that are currently
Absolutely.
implementing
So,
telehealth or looking to.
so it makes a ton of sense, especially when you're looking at ways to optimize, right? So now, since the Mental Health Parity Act in 2015, it pays the same as it would be in an in-person visit.
Gotcha.
So we'll go over some of the benefits of that in one of the later slides, but it really allows for, again, it's all about flexibility and creating a situation where you can have more optimization in the practice. Let's go for it, Ray.
Sweet. I have one question to ask. Obviously, on one of these slides, you sort of mentioned audio, video, and you know, obviously we've come a long way in technology since the beginning, right? So there's so many different applications that you can use for telehealth. Can you shed some light on some of those or
Yeah, so when possible now, the federal government wants everyone to use audio and video.
right.
Why? Because that is the best method, buddy. So basically what ends up happening is that when we can do audio and video at the same time in a live format like this,
Hmm.
they were more likely to pay and know that you're paying attention to the patient. The pre-recorded audio video, so this is a video that they send and then you respond in a video. It's more complex. I've actually never seen a system like that in play. So I'm kind of surprised it's still within the rules, but they have it within the rules. So,
Sounds
I mean, it's still allowable. I don't
so,
know how anybody could find a provider that would be
I
willing
was
to
gonna
do that
gonna
and
say it
sit
sounds
there
like a
and
lot of
wait.
work. Sounds like a lot of
Yeah.
work
So
involved behind that.
it's a huge pain. So I don't know how they would do it, but they do it. So if it works for the provider and it works for the practice and everybody knows how to bill properly, then you're good to go. Remember too that certain insurances are going to have modifiers for when you do telemedicine. So we want to make sure that we have those in place as well. So, but again, that's another thing that we'll go on in the next piece.
Yeah, so
So
obviously turning our attention to some of the organizations involved, can you shed some light on the roles that the CMS, DEA, state boards, and insurance carriers
absolutely.
are involved
So
in telehealth?
yeah, so I like to go by measure of importance, right? CMS and HHS are pretty much going to be the ones that decide what is going to be allowable for the industry as a whole, because the private insurances basically follow what CMS and HHS do. And usually that involves some kind of study from NIH or CDC in regards to, specifically in this case, access to care and quality of care, right? So right now they're talking a lot about AI in healthcare and different quality issues and ways that AI has been learning based on insurance
Sure.
rules, which is totally fun and not stupid. But whatever, we're not going to touch that today. But so when we look at CMS, this is where you have that location requirement, and then DEA for the kinds of meds. So specifically for ours in mental health, we have a lot of class twos. So we need to be aware that if our provider is going to be providing certain kinds of medications, there may be special rules that I need to follow based on what the state says, based on what DEA says. So we want to make sure that we build in those processes and those fail safes, because the last thing we want is an alphabet agency knocking on our door saying, "Hey, you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing." Um,
Absolutely.
Now, when it comes to the state boards, where I was going before someone woke up a little bit cranky, basically we had this is where the COVID situation created a whole bunch of chaos, and it basically allowed for Pandora's box to be open, and I doubt that it'll ever get closed. And what I mean by that is this is where you have a situation where grandma may live in Florida half the year. The other half of the year, she's in New York,
Mhm.
and she's stuck in New York, or she's stuck in Delaware visiting a grandchild, but she can't get to either home or either provider. What do we do? Well, during state of emergencies and different things like that, that's why we had to keep an eye on everything. There were certain allowances that were temporarily allowed. So, and that were given to healthcare providers, right? So we have the different tools for video conferencing. Again, we're going to touch on those in a second. And we've talked about video conferencing tools in regards to consents before, and different security features that everybody knows are in place. And then we have the issue of the pharmacies, because it's one thing for me to write a script, it's another thing entirely for the pharmacy to actually go and fill said script. So there were certain headaches there that we had to deal with, because let's be honest, if I have a license in Florida, what's the difference between the actual license in Florida versus California, Ohio, New York, Missouri? It's a bunch of bureaucratic nonsense, but it is in place. So we got to
Just
deal with it. So after all that, we have to make sure, and the patients they should not be coached. Patients should not be coached on this. But if you're conducting telemedicine visit, you should be asking, where is the patient currently? So that way you can document it appropriately and make sure that everything is nice and clean. Now, is there a way for you to prove that the patient is where they say they are?
that's exactly the he took the words out of my mouth.
No, there
Yeah.
is not. Because none of these
You can't
video conferencing tools that I have seen
this is,
tell me, they don't give me an IP
yeah, I was gonna
address and
say
a
they don't.
geolocation.
Right. Right.
And even if it did give me a geolocation, you mean to tell me that now I need to understand coordinates, random coordinates on a map, and then figure out if that's within the state border? It's way too much work. And no one's realistically going to do that. So we take the
Exactly.
patients at their word, and that can be a detriment, but that's also where the pharmacies come into play to help piggyback. Now, I
For
have seen
sure.
quite a few of the mail-in pharmacies that are far more lenient, shall we say. And the more brick and mortar pharmacies tend to be a little bit more strict when it comes to that, because for the mail-in pharmacy, they're mailing it, like it's the same thing for them. So it can be challenging. You just need to know where the risks are. The insurance carriers, some of them will pay for telemedicine, some of them will not. Some of them will pay for certain types of telemedicine visits, some of them will not. So you really want to take a look and see, what insurances are we participating with, or do we want to participate and do telemedicine with only certain types?
Mhm.
Medicare is really big right now, as you saw on the last slide. I don't know how they do PT other than by teaching the patient the exercises and being like, well, then again, I guess that's pretty much what PT is, unless I'm doing manual therapy, where I'm just watching you do exercises, and they can bill for that. So, I mean, that can cause all kinds of fun problems, because you can't really fix form by showing them on their body. You kind of have to talk them through it, so that one can be tricky. But you can do a lot of interesting things with telemedicine now, especially with how many people have things like Fitbit and remote monitoring. So you can really, really keep track of the patient, and you can get accurate measurements. So if I'm doing chronic care, if I'm dealing with a patient that's homebound, but we can only have limited contact with the patient for whatever the reason, then we can really still do a telemedicine visit and assess different issues, or keep track with the patient, or touch base with the patient, and then we can bill for it accordingly.
Mhm.
Maybe it's just a nurse visit.
Mhm.
Okay, well, instead of making a phone call, now my nurse can say, I saw the patient through a video conference, rather than me just making a phone call and hoping the patient picks up. So there's a lot of different ways to add value to this. We just got to make sure that we do it appropriately. So cool. Let's keep
Sure.
going.
So that sort of dives into our next
Yep.
segment here.
So
Let's talk about the risk factors.
yeah, so when it comes to everything has a risk, right? And you haven't seen HIPAA privacy be too much of an issue when it comes to telemedicine rules because it's all virtual. Until I start taking notes as a provider, let's say I'm at home and again, someone's in my office or we have, someone quote unquote working from home and they get into
Co-host,
something,
co-host.
like we can have issues, so we want to make sure that things are appropriately taken care of. HIPAA security is your bigger problem for a variety of reasons, but if you are on last week's consent call with us, you're a little bit more comfortable. So here's what I mean. When you set up a Zoom, for example, is it all that secure? Depends on how you set it up. Do I set it up with a passcode? How
Mm,
many people have access to the email when I send out the invite? So there's certain things that we need to take into account. And a lot of people heard this when when COVID was going on, where you had all the students in the class, and then a student's little brother or big brother would jump on and do something stupid and mess everything up, right? So it's the same kind of situation. It just happens to be that, the kids aren't a HIPAA security concern, but what we do in healthcare is. So we
yes.
really want to make sure that that piece is taken care of. Now, the patient can take this video call from wherever they choose because that's the beauty of the technology that we have today. But the second
Which
they
is
start
interesting.
that call or they start that conversation with us, that is them giving us consent
Yep.
to speak to them and anyone who can hear about their healthcare condition or conditions. So if hopefully, I
Hopefully you're
mean,
not
we've
at a
got patients that are,
Starbucks.
I mean, hopefully they're not taking it in the middle, this call in the middle of Target or Walmart or Publix or, a school, and we're talking about all kinds of craziness, depending on what the patient's a chief complaint is, or if
Mm,
we're doing a follow-up. So there is a little bit of sometimes the patient needs to have a little bit of shame so they can have a little bit more of a private situation when they're taking this call and for ambient noise and things of that nature. But you'll be shocked, especially for certain specialties, where the patients will take the call from. And sometimes that gives us more information that we didn't have before. So, especially for things like mental health, for things like ENT, where we get a unique insight into how the patient lives or works, and we can figure out, okay, well, maybe you have an environmental issue, not just an actual clinical issue, because you don't get to see into their house, you don't get to see in their office or
right.
their car. So this can be an interesting tool that you can make better decision making practices within everything going on here. Now, when it comes to OIG, like I said, and when it comes to documentation, you always want to put down that this is a telemedicine visit. You want to put the appropriate modifier there. You want to be able to figure out what is the best teleconferencing tool for you. Now, here is what we have experienced as consultants. Everyone comes in and says, hey, you want to use our teleconferencing tool? It's HIPAA compliant because everything is HIPAA compliant nowadays. Now, here's the
That's what
problem
they
with
say.
that. Everything is HIPAA compliant until the human element messes with it. So, what does that mean? That means I can potentially use Zoom and continue to use Zoom as my primary teleconferencing tool as long as I take the appropriate measures and take care of things. Now, here's what normally happens. I'm using Zoom for, let's just keep using Zoom as an example.
Sure.
And I'm all of a sudden I am like, hey, Zoom. So I'm a healthcare clinic. Um, we're going to use your Zoom technology for healthcare. They say, okay, cool. Well, here's our healthcare pricing. And it's 5 to 10 times more than the same freaking product that they give out to the masses. it drives me bonkers, absolutely bonkers. So make sure that you're using the right tool and you're paying the right price. A
Sure.
lot of the EHRs nowadays have either white labeled or they have their own teleconferencing tools, so it makes it easier for you to do for you to use this technology within your practice, so you have fewer ways that user error can make things difficult, because there's nothing more annoying than a provider who's pissed off because they can't talk to the patient and do their job, right? So try to make it as easy as possible for everyone involved. Now, when it comes to the teleconferencing tools, I like to have two. So we currently use um, UpDocs through Practice Fusion because it's white labeled and it connects to our EHR. And then we use Zoom as a backup in case UpDocs goes down. It happens. Every system has an issue. Boom, good, you're good to go. I do not like to use FaceTime
Yeesh.
or Google or Facebook chat or WhatsApp or anything like that. I don't like using those. And the reason is because I'm using personal devices now. And
Right.
regardless on my comfort with conspiracy theories, our phones are amazing at recording things and paying attention to what we're doing and saying. So we want to be careful with different situations like that. So I really don't like the FaceTime model. I really don't like the Facebook chat model. One of the other things as well is when it comes to teleconferencing, a lot of them have the option to record the visits.
You're talking about the
So what
Zoom.
is
The
that?
Zoom has the capability to record.
I I haven't heard lately of a teleconferencing tool that is incapable of recording the
Sure.
chat and call. So what does that mean? I can record it and I can store the call in case I want to. However, understand that can also be the same thing that ends up being a major issue. So, for the same reason that there are providers that don't like to use EHR, because paper records are more secure and more easily modifiable because there's no track record. So if there's an issue, they can address it. I'm not saying that everyone does that doesn't use an EHR, but if you've been in the industry for a little bit, you know of a provider that has done that before, or it's been talked about doing that before to get out of a jam. Recording a call, recording patient visits, if you record one, you gotta record them all.
Sure. I'm curious.
We don't
Does the Zoom offer a so if you record a Zoom, right, Zoom telehealth
Yep,
call, is there a
yep.
transcript recording, or is it just a
It
straight up
records
just
the
audio?
whole video conference.
Does it include a transcript and a summary of the call?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I know that UpDocs doesn't do that as well, but it doesn't matter. It has the video.
Sure. Sure.
So if I have an issue or if there is an issue, yes, it can protect the practice and the provider. But it can also skewer the provider because maybe I wasn't paying attention because we had someone that woke up from their nap already and a little cranky. And so then maybe they're not as focused as they should be on the patient, right? So not naming names, Donovan. Um, but what does that do though? It really goes and it can be a risk. So you just need to assess, is the risk appropriate and how to mitigate said risk. It's not to say that your provider is doing anything wrong, but it's just like putting cameras in your exam rooms. Do you
Yeah.
really want to be doing that?
I don't
So
think
it
so.
just kind of depends. Cool. Let's go.
So
All right. So before we jump into some of the benefits here, we've really got to go over why we decided to do it in our practice. So I'm going to give you our practice as a perfect example. I'm going to run through it fast just because it seems like I would say half to most of our participants have some familiarity with telemedicine. We're a mental health or a behavioral health office in Northeast Florida. We do low level, low complexity mental health conditions, and there's a couple reasons why we did that. One, because sadly, the insurances pay us the same, whether you're a paranoid schizophrenic or if you've got common depression. So the stress level on the staff and the providers to get right and to be able to help someone who has paranoid schizophrenia or opioid use disorder is the juice worth the squeeze. We, as an ownership group, decided that it wasn't. We could really help out a greater portion of the community with far less complexity, have less burnout on our provider side, and have less burnout on our employee side by incorporating telemedicine and focusing on those lower level, lower complexity conditions. And this isn't to say that depression can't be awful, but it's just to say that when I'm looking at the numbers,
Mm,
when I'm looking at the risk, depression doesn't hold a candle to dissociative identity disorder, to gender dysphoria, to paranoid schizophrenia, to opioid use disorder. And the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? So we focus low level there. Now,
mm,
because when we're dealing with ADHD, depression, anxieties, bipolar, and PTSD, there are some class 2 DEA medications. We, based on the state of Florida and the DEA, need to establish the patient in our office. That is part of the rule. So when we get a new patient, their first eval has to be in the office. After that, the patient, as long as they're within the boundaries of the state of Florida, they can be anywhere they want to be. So this way, we see the patient once, we confirm the patient is who they say they are, we get their all their information that we need to be able to build them properly, and then we move on. So it's really something to where it makes life a little bit smoother for us in the office because now
sure.
I have control of the patient. I can send them the blank paperwork to whatever email they want. And then they can send me back their filled out information, or they can bring it with them at the time of the visit. Boom, we're there, we're out of there. We automatically set up our evals because we're a specialist
Mm,
at 40 minutes. And there are some patients that take an hour. There are some patients that take 20 minutes. It all depends. But when we block it out for an hour or block it out for 40 minutes, then all of a sudden we can negotiate our schedule more. We set up our follow ups for 20 minutes. Now, why do we do this? Because we are a specialty. So we want to be able to take as much time as we need, but realize that because of the script rules, and once we have the pharmacy script rules, and once we have the patient on a stable cocktail, a lot of times they're coming in just for their scripts and then move on because there are no changes.
mm,
So, really, it takes us longer to set the visit and the patient to jump on and the provider to jump on than it does for the actual visit. It's kind of how it goes. Especially for those ADHD patients where they're just like, hey, just give me my Adderall and let me go. Either no changes, it's working, let's go. My biggest problem is that, hey, every 6 months there's an Adderall shortage. So then we got to find the pharmacy,
mhm.
switch the drug or whatever the case may be, or switch the dosage. That's the bigger headache. But realistically, that made our office do this thing where we run on time. And so when we found that we could accidentally do that very, very effectively and very consistently, we started putting it as part of our pitch. We do this thing where you set an appointment and it's at the time that you booked, which is a completely uncommon thing in the United
Oh
States
yeah.
as a whole in the healthcare system. You can set up a 10 o'clock visit, and if you're in there by 10:45, and by in there I mean in the exam room, not even seen by the provider in
Right.
45 minutes, you're happy because you're moving. When we took over the practice, that practice was running 3 hours behind schedule every day. So forget the admin costs, forget the stress level on the employees, forget the stress level on the patients. all of them stacked in a waiting room,
Mm,
now it's all smooth.
yeah. Yeah.
Even if we were behind by 45 minutes, because most of our visits are telemedicine, the patient has no idea how many patients are ahead of them or how far we are behind.
They just care about joining in, right? The scheduled
There
time.
you go.
So
So, for a lot of our patients that are at work that have to
efficiency.
take time off of work for the visit, now all of a sudden, instead of taking a half a day or 3 hours, now it's, hey, doctor, hey, Susie, the doctor's ready for you now. Jump on. They take a smoke break, go to their car, boom, take the call and be done with it. You know what I mean? Like all
Yeah.
of a sudden, the convenience on the patient, because let's be honest, I want my patient to stay in business. Because if my patient stays in business, they have the money to pay me.
Yeah.
That's a healthcare provider, right? So we have these unexpected benefits. Then we have a lot of schedule control there. So we pretty much plan it out to where we can decrease the level of burnout because we're increasing the likelihood of the patient, one, to come back, two, to be happy, but three, that they're going to keep their appointment. Because nothing's more annoying than we have to double book because of the fact that we know that 30% of our visits are not going to show up. Right now, we're showing at a 12% no-show or cancellation rate. And of that
It's not bad.
12%, 80% of those are new patients.
It's not bad.
So what are we seeing here? We're seeing that the patients are keeping their visits because it's convenient. And convenience makes us money. One of the other interesting things was that providers are an interesting breed, and the interpersonal issues that come into play with providers and everyone else, even providers among providers, can be challenging and can be one of the things that office management and administration have to deal with when it comes to how do we manage these kinds of people.
Mm,
All of a sudden, that's no longer
point.
an issue. My provider's not in the office. If my provider isn't in the office, then my staff don't have to deal with that personality constantly there. It's, hey, when you need something, you let us know. All right, perfect. And then they communicate back and forth through either an instant messenger or through a text message and or a phone call, and it's good to go. What we found was that we basically deleted the MA for the provider, and it's basically that MA is now able to manage two providers because a lot of the patients that are tech savvy are doing it from home. So they're just clicking and going, clicking and going. And then the patient's calling us or notifying us when they want to set up for the next visit. So we don't have to babysit and walk the patient back and forth or do any of that stuff. Now, if I need to get more vitals from the patient, this is where we start working with them on the remote monitoring.
Yeah.
Hey, do you have a Fitbit? Hey,
Do you have an
what's your weight
iWatch?
right now? You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, what's your watch?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of
Tracks all
different,
those.
yeah, so there were a lot of benefits there that we didn't realize we could take advantage of that now we are leveraging like crazy. What we realized too is that the patients have a better experience from just not being in the office
Question,
and
Jose.
not
How
sitting
do
in
you
that waiting room.
when it comes to
And
the
we don't
fit
have a bad looking waiting room, but it's just a
right?
matter of convenience, right? You know? So when it comes to some of the unexpected risks and some of the unexpected problems that we did have. If there's a connectivity issue with the patient and the provider, that can be a problem. So this is where we'll say, hey, especially for our Medicare patients, when they come in for their eval, what our front office will do is set them up with a video call so we can show them right then and there how to do it. If they're interested, doing it from home. If not, they can come to the office and it's not a big deal. They're still going to see the provider through telemedicine because the provider's not there.
No, it makes
So
sense.
pretty much the only people in my office, 4 days a week are my office staff.
And they're probably just obviously managing the provider, the patient, but more so scheduling the
It's all virtual
appointments.
now.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it's all virtual
scheduling
now.
the appointments and making sure there's no overlap and all that good stuff. And
Well, and the great
obviously
thing,
talking through if you have a, I know you mentioned those percentages earlier, but it's fair to say there's got to be, you know, a
oh,
percentage
there's
that
definitely
are just
drawbacks, right? So
non tech savvy
one,
individuals.
yeah, so you have to be tech literate.
Hmm.
Even though a lot of these conferencing tools now is just, hey, I got the message through either email or by text, and I just click the button and it gets me going. But if I have the security settings to where it doesn't allow the video camera or it doesn't allow the mic on initiation of the app, that can be an issue. If it's something to where I'm uncomfortable with my email, like my grandparents, I can't send them a video to my grandparents. Donovan, cut it out. Jesus. Gotta antagonize the dog. So when it comes to that, we gotta just adjust, right? So those patients that aren't tech literate or don't feel like dealing with it. That's why we have the brick and mortar. I haven't
It's a
needed
win-win.
billing on site for 20 years.
Hmm.
I don't need billing on site now. So we can leverage our small location now for more of space to be able to see more patients. So obviously, counseling that's telemedicine.
Hmm.
They do that for an hour. That's easy to keep on time. But one of the unexpected drawbacks that we saw was not just the tech literacy of the patients, even though COVID really made them grow and forced them to learn how to use teleconferencing tools.
Agree.
One of the issues was that for a while we had to wait till the remote monitoring technology caught up. One of the issues that we've caught up, we've been dealing with for the last year and a half, really, is every year the insurance companies send your patient a new card. So now we have to hound the patient
To get that information.
to get that new card. And
Yeah.
because they may be on the same Medicare plan for the last 15 years, but for
Listen,
some stupid reason, CMS has decided we're going to spend more money to print out these new cards and we're going to change your Medicare number. Why? Possible logical reason do they have to do that? They don't.
there
They do
isn't.
it anyways. And what do we have to do as providers? We got to figure it out.
You got to figure it out and deal with it.
We just got to roll with that punch.
Sure.
Or hey, every time you see the patient, has your insurance changed? No. Has your insurance changed? No. And then you find out you've seen them 3 times and there's still a balance because we keep billing the wrong insurance because they switched jobs and they didn't tell us. That's an extremely common thing, Ray, believe it or not.
Yeah. No, I believe it. I believe it.
So it's something to where that piece has gotten a little bit more difficult for us, admittedly, because now once we establish you, the patient doesn't ever come to the office,
Right.
even though we may ask them, and even though the provider may ask them, we don't have that before the visit to put it into the system and get it ready and check. So we have to base it off of the old stuff. So now we put it in our reminders. So because we're mental health, there's a total of 5 reminders that we send out to the patient, believe it or not. Okay. They get a phone call 5 days before. They get an email reminder 3 days before. They get an invoice for their copay or their deductible 2 days before.
Okay.
And then they get a text message the day before. And then depending on whether the patient's a Medicare patient or not, we will call them the day of, or if they're one of our first patients, we'll call them the afternoon prior to make sure if they're coming to the office or not, so we can have the appropriate setup.
Gotcha.
So
So there's a confirmation process and those reminders that you're sending out essentially.
absolutely,
Yeah.
because it's not just the card, but now it's a little bit more difficult as well for me to capture the copay or the deductible, because now
Right.
they have to open an email. Now, because we're using it as a reminder, what we're also able to do is limit the amount of people that have access to the money. That's right, because it goes straight to our account and not to potentially somebody's car bill or
Right.
somebody's happy hour drinks because they're not taking cash anymore. They're not even
Yeah.
taking the card information. The patient's putting it in themselves, and Amazon taught them how to do that. So I don't have to worry about that piece.
True story, man.
Well, I
That's
mean, it's just we're just leveraging life,
I
right?
like the
And
the text
uh,
feature is smart too, because again, everybody's got a cell phone. It's safe to say,
well,
I'd say
it's
most
it's
people have
one
a
of those
cell
things
phone.
where if you have a cell phone, you're getting the text message. If you have an
Right.
email, because remember that some patients will not give you their email.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Some patients will not give you their cell phone. But this way, we guarantee, okay, you got the phone call.
Hmm.
No matter what, you got the phone call and you got either the text or the email. Either way, you got the invoice because if you're going to do telemedicine, you got to have this information.
Yeah. Cover your bases.
Yeah, so it's something to where we have some patients that are like, all right, I get it. I have ADHD. You don't have to send me six reminders. And I'm like, it's not for you that I send the six reminders, but it helps because you won't miss your visit.
Yeah.
I need all this information. So there's pros and cons to everything, right? We just have to isolate what is the best way to do it. For us, we found also that sometimes some of the providers we had, they like to talk to patients as much as the patients like to talk to them. Setting it up this
It's
way and
good.
pretty much being like, hey, we got to move on. Hey, we got to move on. Hey, we got to move on. It allowed for things to get smoother. It allowed for things to get faster. So it allowed for a lot of efficiencies that
Yeah,
we
efficiency
didn't
and just
expect and that we did expect.
better
So,
outcome
I mean,
overall. Right.
what kind of things can we normally do? Taking the example away, right? So, buddy, so managing chronic care conditions where maybe they're doing a nurse visit every 2 weeks, but instead of having them clog up our office, now I can have an RN from home that as long as she's got the appropriate license, she can do these chronic care calls.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Bobby, how's your oxygen? Hey, what's your blood pressure? Hey, have you taken a walk? Hey, what's your weight? Hey, how you
Mhm.
feeling? All of these things can be done through telemedicine. And with the high def cameras that we've got going on now and the high def tools, we can really, really just leverage them. Like, buddy, I'm going to pay so much money to daycare for you to just go. You know that? So, I mean, that's pretty much it. If you've got specific questions and everything else, obviously there's always going to be little details that make things different, but take a look at your processes. Take a look at what can be optimized. And it's even though we deleted that MA role, all of a sudden that MA role had to be tech savvy because they were doing a lot of the troubleshooting for the provider and they were manipulating this and keeping the providers on task, on patient to patient to patient to patient. So that way we could stay on time. So you're really just manipulating and moving resources around. You're not deleting resources that you're using. But now I have one AMA working with two full-time providers rather than one AMA just follows one
Follows
provider
one
all day.
around. Yeah. No, it's efficient. I think the main point as well that you mentioned is wait times. You know, it's you schedule your appointment or telehealth visit and you're joining in at that time. I mean that alone right there, as a patient, that's got to be a good
I
feeling,
mean,
right?
if I'm a pediatrician, if I'm being honest, I would be doing this all the time,
Yeah.
especially for like seasonal stuff. Hey, I got the seasonal flu. Hey, my kids got the seasonal allergies. Hey, it's just the little
It
nonsense.
would
All right,
certainly
let's
make
just.
my life easier considering my daughter had the flu not too long ago and I had to go
I
to the
mean,
office and visit with
this is
20 other
pretty
sick kids
common
there.
stuff. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
common stuff, especially when you have already established the patient, right? So once you've already established the patient, you know what's going on. So you're not just
Right.
guessing, which is
Right.
what I think CMS and HHS had the biggest problem with is that if we do the evaluation through telemedicine, how do we know that the patient's receiving the correct care? Because there is admittedly some information that a provider gets from seeing the patient physically, but
Sure.
that they're not going to get through a video call.
No, I agree.
But then they just need to be observant in a different kind of way because, like I said, with the ENT and with the mental health, we can see it. We can get a glimpse into the patient's environment.
Yes.
So if I'm an ENT and I'm like, wow, you have 5 dogs or 4 cats and there's hair everywhere. I wonder why your allergies aren't going away. I wonder why your COPD is getting
Right.
worse. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
Good. No, good point.
so you can see all these kinds of situations. Oh, maybe I'm a cardiologist. I'm following up
You'll
with a
see more. I
hypertension
feel like you'll
patient.
see more personality too. Some people just
Yeah, because I
straight up
mean,
just don't
you
want
would
to go
be
visit a doctor's office. They get tense or nervous or whatnot. They feel more comfortable, doing it from the
well,
home or
and it's one of those things where it doesn't matter the patient population, they're not stupid,
right.
right? So if you can get a more honest reaction and visit out of the patient, it actually ends up helping the patient because a lot of
Does.
times we see this in admin, and I know most of your chat will say this too. The patient that talks to us at admin is completely different than the patient that talks to the provider.
Mm, sure.
It's almost like they got Jackal Mr. Hyde stuff going on here. So it's real interesting. I would say that if you're not using telemedicine, you're not even playing with a tool that could be leveraging more revenue with the same resources. Because there really isn't much of a modification from what you're doing. As long as you can assess what the risks are and try to mitigate them, there's no real reason why you shouldn't. At least for certain things, not for everything. Obviously, you can't do a procedure through telemedicine yet. I know that there's some crazy robots technology that they're working on where doctors in Hawaii and the patients in Tennessee, and he's managing the robot. But it's a whole nother level of nonsense that we're not ready for, honestly.
It's
So,
coming. It's
any
coming.
questions? Any questions? Any concerns?
Yeah.
I'm an
So
open book.
So guys, Jose, I appreciate that. And if you guys have any question related to telehealth, please feel free to reach out to Jose or myself. As Jose mentioned, he works for a consulting group as well. If you're possibly interested in getting a telehealth clinic
Mm.
set up and want to learn more, please feel free to reach out to us. We can certainly schedule a meeting and kind of discuss those things and see what the best fit is. But again, for those of you that just joined with us today, just a couple things here. For those of you that haven't taken your OSHA training this year, we do offer a free OSHA course. If you go to EPICourses.com, you can register for a free OSHA training there. If you guys are, again, ultimately, Jose, it's safe to say, when it comes down to to the compliance side of things, obviously, HIPAA training, all that good stuff's going to be involved as well. And that's again, these are things that we can help you here at EPICompliance. We sort of have a training a bundle package if your staff interested in learning more about HIPAA. Again, wink, wink. It is a requirement as well to have this training once a year. Uh, we can certainly help you out with that. We have a training bundle, offers OSHA training, HIPAA privacy, HIPAA security, and Medicare waste, fraud, and abuse training included. And if you're looking to jumpstart your practice and really looking for something more all inclusive, we do offer a pro program where it gives you access to not only just the training but policies, procedures, tasking, business associate agreement templates, etc. And again, at the end of the day, if you guys have any questions, concerns, please feel free to reach out to us. You guys will be receiving some correspondence from us. There's a link in there. You can schedule a consultation. It's completely free. Jose or myself will certainly assess your needs and see what's the best fit. But other than that, yes, we will open up for just a quick Q&A. Guys, feel free to chime in the chat with your questions.
Well, one interesting case that we had, because we do work with healthcare attorneys, and we did find that there is a rather major loophole even with the DEA reg for telemedicine. So if I pay cash to a doctor's office and I set up a visit, and my name is John Adams, perfect. We in Florida have this thing called an e-force, so I can go and ask for, hey, I need to get an Adderall. I need to get an Adderall script. I've got ADHD. All right. Well, depending on the type of practice, we do the evals in person, but it's not always required for class threes, depending on the location. For class twos, it is, right?
Interesting.
But I can manipulate things through when I'm a cash patient. I'm not going to pop up on these databases.
Huh.
So then what does that do? That means that I'm going to use the same name with the pharmacy, and I'm just going to go to different pharmacies and manipulate the system that way. So we really want to be careful with everything. So
Yeah.
one of the big ones, Ray, was like right now it's Suboxone.
Mhm.
DEA and the federal government have eased up the restrictions in regards to Suboxone because even though it's a class 3, it is used for opioid use disorder. Basically the new methadone, right? So we use that to help tamp down the cravings. So you're supposed to go through an entire program. That's not what happens. If you're on Suboxone and you don't work the steps, you're going to be on Suboxone for the rest of your life. So basically, what that means is you're paying $250, $200 for the visit every 30 days, every 90 days. And a lot of these patients, because they have
It's a lot of money.
opioid use disorder, they overuse. So what ends up happening is you run out, but you're on a database, so your provider, even if they wanted to, can't give
Can't
you a
do it.
script, which
Yeah.
which means what? Now the patient is going out on the street and buying it however they can get a hold of it.
That's bad. Yeah.
It's a problem. It's a genuine problem. I mean, you can do this with ketamine. I can do this. I can just look up, okay, what is ketamine prescribed for? What is Suboxone prescribed for? Have WebMD up, talk to the provider. The provider's doing the best that they can with good intention, and I'm just doctor shopping. Which is why you need to have that evaluation in person. So that way you have that license. Because if they're going to go through the trouble of BSing a license,
It's
and
definitely
then they're going to go through the trouble of BSing the initial visit with a fake name, and they're going to go through the trouble of doing all that, I mean, there's nothing we can do there because they're already doing that. But we're taking that step of we did everything we could do reasonably. So if the patient gets in trouble because they've got 4 different aliases that they're working through the entire Northeast Florida area, for example, what am I supposed to do?
I'm trying to recall. I feel like, and this is something we dealt with when I used to work for the weight loss clinic. We prescribed Adipex, and I want to say there was an application that because we've had a couple of those, where they come in from it. They would go to another weight loss center and get prescribed the Adipex and wouldn't actually follow through with a protocol, and then they would approach us like hey, as a new patient basically. And there's gosh, I can't remember what it's called.
It's called the
There was a
E-Force.
there was a
In Florida, it's
database
called
that
E-Force.
the database that we use, we'd search the patient and it would pop up and we'd be able to see,
You'd be able to see what the patient was on, when it was
yes,
prescribed,
yes. I don't,
and
it was something else, but I'll have to,
you'd be able to see where they got the script filled.
yes, yes. And that's what we
It's
would
called
do.
E-Force in Florida.
Was it E-Force? Man, it's 7 or 8 years ago, but
Yeah, it's
we
E-Force. I
definitely
mean,
we've
they
used it. We've used it, and we've had to deal with some of those patients before, and
absolutely. Patients
ultimately
aren't
we just,
stupid.
oh yeah, ultimately we just tell them, hey, we can't do this for you. But yeah, no, that's definitely a problem.
But every
Well,
specialty has that problem where you got the patient that comes in and they know more about the drug than the pharmacist do.
it's crazy.
Like what are you gonna do? I
Yeah.
mean, we try to screen them out honestly because I just don't need that headache.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately
I mean,
that's all you can do, in
I
that
mean,
event.
there's one
But
thing to know, there's one thing to be aware of your conditions. It's another thing entirely to try to dictate the plans of care when you barely know what's going on. You know what I mean?
right.
Like it's it's tough, but it's it's the tricky wicket that we find ourselves. But yeah, I mean, if there aren't any questions, I mean,
No, it looks like we had no questions today, and Again, appreciate everybody for joining in today. I hope you guys found some value in this topic. If you have any suggestions to make or any topics you'd like us to talk on, please feel free to reach out to us. I'm certainly glad to talk about stuff that's obviously going on in your daily lives. That's obviously in healthcare. But next week we're going to be talking about macro and MIPS. We're going to be diving into that. It's going to be interesting. This will be our first Medicare topic. And it's
That
going to be,
one's gonna be. I'm gonna prep everybody. That one's gonna be multi-week. You can't dive into macro and MIPS in 20 minutes. I don't care
no,
who you
no,
are.
no. This is going to be what do you call it? Just the basics. We'll call it the basics.
Well, so next week
I
is gonna be.
titled it understanding the core elements, but there's so much
Yeah,
that goes
so yeah,
into it.
so next week we're gonna be talking about what led to macro and MIPS and what is macro and MIPS and what's the purpose.
Right.
Then we'll dive in a little bit deeper, and then we'll take suggestions over any specific areas you guys want to get into.
Yep. But
Because
appreciate you
by then
guys
we'll be
joining.
reaching about 3 weeks out from reporting
Yeah,
time.
yeah, we'll be mentioning that next week. But I appreciate everybody's time. And again, look forward to seeing you all next week. You will receive some correspondence from us, and obviously another link to schedule for next week's webinar. And I hope to see everybody there. And Jose, again, appreciate your time, and we'll see everybody next week.
Definitely,
And
man.
Donovan's
Have a good
time as
one,
well.
guys. Stay warm.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Bye.